Okay. The unfortunate thing is it still doesn't change what you all hear. So I mean, I unmuted. That's why I didn't know because there's no way of telling one from the other. But anyhow, uh, Mr. Jack, will you will you open us in prayer? Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. So I get the opportunity of teaching whenever Dave has something else going on or when he's on a missions trip. So I'm so glad that he is on mission so I get to talk to y'all about look, do you need help? Hey, what's going on? I surely can get it. I could tell something was going on and your sister wouldn't help you. She was just laughing at you. She was just laughing at you. So I figured somebody had to help you. There we go. I Oh my. Well, I don't know why you told us an extra story like that. I don't know. I didn't think we needed two stories like that. I thought you was gonna tell a redeeming story. I didn't know. There we go. To the story. Uh, well, I hope that's not a precursor to the Judas kiss. No, the Judas kiss. So we're in Luke chapter 22. We're gonna finish it up tonight, and you all have words. You can check them if you if you want to guess them. That could be a fun thing to see if you're right. We also have different translations. I always like to talk about different translations. Sometimes you'll have another word there, and it'll help you understand it or look at it. But I've given you some definitions, some biblical definitions. If you were to take it and you were to say, well, that's this Greek word is whatever it is, and what does that mean? These are the words you find. And so I've done that homework for you, and you get to write it in, and there was ink pens there if you want them. I'm gonna read it because they can't hear from anybody unless we had a mic, and we're not doing, Price is Right, generally all of that audience participation. So I'm gonna save you from the hassle of having to do that. And sorry we missed Mr. Jack's prayer, but with that, I want to open us with 47. Verse 47 says, "While he was still speaking, suddenly a mob was there." Mob. And one of the 12 named Judas was leading them. He came near Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said to him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" When those around him saw what was going to happen, they asked, "Lord, should we strike with the sword?" Then one of them struck the high priest's slave and cut off his right ear. But Jesus responded, "No more of this." And touching his ear, he healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, temple police, and the elders who had come for him, "Have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal? Every day I was with you in the temple complex. You never laid a hand on me. But this is your hour and the dominion of darkness." All right. So as we go through that and just start at verse 47, it says Jesus was speaking to his disciples at night. And this is where you give it a little background. So he's been praying. He keeps coming back, and they keep being asleep. And he keeps saying, "Why can't y'all stay up? You can't just watch for 1 hour." All of these guys says, "We're going to stay with you forever." They can't stay up for 1 hour. And he keeps coming back, and he keeps coming back. And now he's explaining to them that this is the hour. His betrayer is coming. And while he's saying those words to them, here comes the person he's talking about. And it says, while he was still speaking, suddenly a mob. I like that word. I was listening to a translation and it used the word crowd. Crowd, it just doesn't have the same mob. I'm afraid of a mob. A crowd, I might be, you can join the crowd or don't join the crowd, but the mob, I don't ever want to be part of a mob. I don't even, multitude, right? But when I looked up the word, what I thought was interesting is that it pushed it from just being a multitude. So, right, Jesus fed the 5,000. That's usually what we talk about, a multitude, right? Right? And that sounds like a good thing. A whole lot of multitude. We want a multitude of gifts. So we want a multitude. I like to use that one. Mob again. Negative. Some negative. There's something negative about mob when I hear it. And it even said an ignorant multitude. It wasn't just a multitude. It's acknowledged the fact that there's something about it, even the populace. You know, and I talk about it how sometimes we can get a bunch of people on our side. The scripture says the first person who speaks in a lawsuit seems right until someone cross-examines. Right? But the first person they start talking to, he's like, hey, he did this and they did that and all of that. He's like, oh my, I can't believe. And they'll get you really into it. And then it's like, show some evidence. Like, here, we got all of this evidence that none of the stuff they just said was true. He was like, well. And so we just got to look at, there's an ignorant multitude. It's a riot. Right? A lot of times when you watch TV, when something happens, some people get upset, people start looting, and the folks who live in communities, they get so angry that they go to their dry cleaner and they burn it up. And for months, they're not going to have any clean clothes because they burn down their dry cleaner. They don't go all the way across town and take. That's with the rioting. You think about it. Most of the time, the effect. I had a friend. He told me he was so upset one time at his wife. He took the steaks. He threw them in the yard, and I said, I wish you would have brought them steaks to my house. It would have had the same effect. If the whole point is you don't want to eat the steaks, give them to me. I'd have ate the steaks. I'd have taken FaceTime of me eating the steak. Right, look how good this steak. I made it really good. However, you really rub it in. Oh, it's so good. But don't just throw it in the woods. But riot. It's troops together. So it's not just folks hanging. It can even be a troop together without order. So it's interesting. When I was in the military, if you have 3 or more people walking together, there has to be someone leading them. 3 people in uniform just can't be walking together, hanging out. We just look silly. If there's 3 people in uniform, there has to be somebody leading that formation. That becomes a formation after 3 people. And they got to be walking in there. And so most of the time you can you walk behind us? so we can go as pairs so we don't have to be a formation, right? So you just make sure it's not a multitude. And you get around it. Huh? Right, exactly. But y'all wait. But it's without order. Now, I thought this was interesting, but the mob is also a vehicle. Right? It's something that's driving something else. Right? So it says this mob really had something behind them. It's so interesting that the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they were not for the people. They saw themselves as better than the people. They made this great distinction. They said the people don't know anything. That's why they believe in Jesus, right? And so they did not have a respect for the people, but they needed the people. So they used the ignorant mob when they needed all of the people. And they said they were ignorant yesterday, but they said, hey, you guys, start yelling this. Do you know what he's doing? Can you believe he's doing that? And they took those folks. And they use this mob to be the vehicle of their own desire. Right? Exactly. And it's all the time, right? And it's and I know what to say to you, and I know what to say to you, and you can get You can get poor black people saying we deserve the right to abortion. You can see it on a billboard that says that health care, black health care is abortion. People send that to me. You twist it real easy, and you say, "Look what they're trying to keep from you." Yeah, it's not. So it's really easy with this mob mentality. Now, and in this word, which I didn't think it had probably anything to do with our modern context of it, but it was interesting that there's also one last word, which is press, which is I'm assuming it's kind of like the press in, but then I started thinking about like the press, the paparazzi. And I was like, isn't that interesting too? Because it's like, people, some people like even talk about the difficulty that like Princess Diana had or whatever about the press. So many folks have like decided to live a life of seclusion because I just don't want to deal with the press. Says sometimes in those times when Jesus Christ went away, because people kept pushing him to do all of these things, the pressure of that. So it's just an interesting thing what the mob is. There's a whole lot of pressure in the mob, to have the mob mentality, to be one of the crowd. And I think some of the people who were in this mob were those people who were also singing Hosanna. I think some of those people switched, just like the thief on the cross. I think some of these folks were singing. They were going along because everybody was saying, "Who's that? I don't know who that dude is. Well, come on, let's just sing about him. Throw your coat down. This is a good time." And they were all about it. And they said, "Can you believe what this man said?" I can't believe it. In the middle of the night. So that's the first one, mob. We're going to move faster if we want to get through all these pages. I'm really talking to myself, obviously, not to y'all. The next one is kiss. And they told me I got to stay between these two. I'm going to stay under the blood, and I'm going to stay close to these things. All right. So he came near. Judas came in leading this group, this mob, and he came in to kiss. This is... the only other word that is used for this in the scriptures is love. So, it's a very clear understanding of love. This is an affectionate treatment. It's kind welcome. It's a befriending or tender embrace. That's what you do to a friend. And that's exactly how Jesus Christ had treated Judas. And nobody would have thought that would have been the person. And I was in Matthew today, and as I was in Matthew today, it seems like it's the day before. As it's going, because Matthew starts saying it was 2 days before. And he said, okay, it was 2 days before. On the next day. Then it was the day. All right, well, it seems to match up that the day before was the day that Judas decided that he was going to go. So it's been the whole week. And he's been there with him. All of these conversations, all of the things that we've been talking about for the last few weeks at this church, Judas has been right there. And it was only just now, just last night, that Satan entered his mind, and now he is betrayed, and 30 pieces of silver. He's been waiting for an opportunity, the scripture says, when there wasn't a crowd present. Right? There was a crowd of people that were following Jesus. Not a riot, not a mob. That's why he said, "Why y'all coming against me like this?" He said those people were being kind. Those folks weren't doing anything to anybody. But now they've come against him in the middle of the night, and it's done with a kiss. So they rose up, these disciples of his, Judas's friends. They put it together. They started, oh man, that's what's going on. I see what's happening now. And they were ready to go. Now, if you remember from the sermon Sunday, Jesus just said to them a few hours ago, "Hey guys, the last time, you remember when I used to send you out, told you don't take a whole bunch of stuff? I want y'all to have a sword." And say, "Hey, we got 2. That's enough. Cut it out. Let's go." I always think there's an interesting thing right there. Like that, there's a sword presented There's a sword used, but I love the next word that we go down, not from the just strike and struck, so afflicted or to cut down, but healed. And you see what Jesus Christ still does? These people are coming against him as a mob in the middle of the night. They should be letting him sleep. They're getting ready for the Passover. I mean, it's like Christmas Eve. Come on, guys. That's this is our one of this is our most special holiday. It's like for us Easter. We're having this beautiful, wonderful time where we remember when God brought our ancestors out of Egypt. That's what Passover is about. When God actually decided to visit them and show that every one of the false gods that the Egyptians believed in had no power and that he alone was sovereign. And that's what they were going to be remembering with a feast and a whole lot of other things that they had. And every year for their whole lives, they had been doing this, and their great-grandparents had been, and they had so many special moments. And every year after this one, they were going to have to remember that man that they saw get beat. I mean, we've watched movies, and it's hard to watch movies, but you know that's not real. You know they're not really beating that man. They didn't pay him that much money to get beat that hard. You know that's all makeup and all acting. Jesus was not acting. There was no makeup. There was no cut scene. Can we do it again? Mel Gibson was not there for the actual No, no, he was not there. And neither was Charleston Heston. None of that. They didn't make it to the real one where our Lord suffered. But yet, in this, he's healing people right before. That's about that. He sees that. He knows that he's been crying. Drops of blood. Angels have come to him. I love it when it's amazing to me. It says that angels come because he's in so much anguish. But then he cries more after the angels come. The angels are there to comfort him. It's such a hard thing. The angels just don't do it. It's still hard. That's the way I see the progression. And yet, after that, he gets up and he's healing people who are coming in to attack him. The supernatural power of Jesus Christ. And this is freeing from error and sin and bringing the salvation. People get to see things, and people's salvation story may include, our salvation story oftentimes include, when I was an enemy of you, oh God, you came and you healed me. There was something I couldn't do. There was something I really needed you to do, and you took it from me and you healed it, whatever that thing was. Now, Jesus says, have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal, particularly a thief or a robber? All right? Somebody who's going to try to take what's yours, a plunderer. And I looked up this word. I had never heard it. Maybe y'all know it. Freebooter. I didn't know. I had never heard of that. But it says this is a foreigner. Yeah, freebooter. And it was also, and what's interesting is freebooter also, and it's not the one you think about with the government, but a filibuster. It's also one of those things. And it was a person who is a foreigner who basically, or a person who goes to another country, goes somewhere else, and then he rallies support for a rebellion or a revolution or a succession of power or something like that. So it's like if I moved to Canada and I was like, you know what? We don't want to do things that way anymore. And it's like, you aren't even from here. It's like, doesn't matter. I'm going to take this over. And I use somebody's grandkid or something like that, and I overthrow the government because I have decided to come in as a non-national. And so that's this type of criminal. Like this word is a very specific type of criminal. Jesus says, you're acting like this is, like I'm not from here. Like this is not my kingdom. Like, I'm trying to take something that's y'all's. They had rolled out the red carpet for him, hadn't they? I mean, like, they sung Hosanna. They recognized that this is the Messiah. What happened? Now you're acting like I'm a criminal. It says, every day while I was with you in the temple complex, you never laid a hand on me. You let me overthrow these tables and you didn't put me in jail. How did you not lock me up? I spent rest of the week free. The first day of the week I came in, upsetting everything that you do. Your whole financial complex was knocked down, and you never stopped me then. But here you are in the middle of the night. But this is your hour and the dominion of darkness. This is the power, the authority, or the jurisdiction. He says, you're using your jurisdiction. You're using everything, and that's what's going to happen in these trials. They're going to keep sending him to people based on their jurisdiction. Oh, we found out that you're from Galilee. Oh, well, you need to go to Herod. And so it keeps on being the jurisdiction. Well, this is Pilate. Well, we got to talk to him. He's the governor, and it's about jurisdiction. But this is also the liberty or the strength. Now, the last part of that is darkness. I love this word, shadiness. That's the first one. Like, I'm sure back in the day it wasn't like a shadiness that we think of. It probably was connected more to shade. But it is this thing where it's like just something that is in obscurity, right? The old words might have been like, it might be a white lie, right? It just might be like a half-truth, right? Whatever, like however you want to phrase those things. But it's whatever immorality, ungodliness, but it's leading to misery in hell. Right? It seems like a small thing, whatever that small thing is. And I'm sure these guys did not think it was that big of a deal that they would get rid of this one dude. I mean, Peter denies the Lord. Oh my. We get from bad to worse, don't we? They seized him, led him away, and brought him into the high priest's house. Meanwhile, Peter was following at a distance. They lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, and Peter sat among them. When a servant saw him sitting in the firelight and looked closely at him, she said, this man was with him too. But he denied it. Woman, I don't know him. After a little while, someone else saw him and said, you're one of them too. Man, I am not, Peter said. About an hour later, another kept insisting this man was certainly with him, since he's also a Galilean. But Peter said, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Immediately, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. Then the Lord turned and looked at Peter. So Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. All right. So Peter denies the Lord. All right, we're tracking. This first word, at a distance. It's interesting to see that where Peter was following from. Right? Peter was there on the Mount of Transfiguration, and he said, hey, let's build shelters. Let's build some tents. He was there with Jesus when he was coming on the water, and he said, hey, I'm going to walk out there with you. Peter was there with Jesus in so many of his miracles. He's the right-hand man so many of the time. Now, not at the Lord's Supper. That's John's position, and Peter has to say, what is he talking about? Ask him who he's talking about. But most of the time, Peter's real close, and if he's not number one, he's somewhere in that top 3. Might be a brother of his that gets there first. It might be somebody else, but usually he's pretty close to the front of the line of the 12. But now, he's at a distance. He said, hey, if I got to go with you, I'm going wherever. And he's going So I just want to, I think that's part of it. I want to give Peter his credit. He's still going, but he's at a distance, from afar or far off. It's something about being long or being remote and trying to put some length or some distance in between. And so we've been talking about it at church, but like we have to think about Easter is the time where a lot of people celebrate something called Lent. And they do a Lenten season, and Lent is oftentimes about taking something that you do, maybe too much of, maybe a bad habit, and you say, I'm not going to do that for 40 days. I'm going to take some of these, and I think that the best thing to think about with that is what Jesus Christ tells us about a house swept clean. And he says, see, when you just take one thing and you take it out, it opens up a spot that's big enough for 7 wickeder, more wicked, more demonic spirits to come in and fill. And I think the lesson there is to fill that spot with something holy. And so what we should really think about during Easter is like, what is it that we need to do to get closer to the Lord? Like, I mean, maybe we got to stop doing something to do that. Maybe there's something like there's too much of this and there's not enough time in the schedule, and the only way we can do it is to get rid of something. But we have to always see that there is Satan trying to put a distance, trying to come between, trying to make us follow at a distance. We were talking about it last night at the finance meeting, and it's like, well, we don't want to ask for too much. We don't want people to think we're just asking and asking and asking. I think that's true, but I also want to make opportunities available for people to partner with good ministries. I mean, ain't it good to be able to say our church does all of these great things? You can do it if you want to. We're not going to put a gun to your head. I'm telling you right now, if you don't do any eggs, I'm not going to try to shame you into making habits. You're not less of a Christian because you didn't support Operation Christmas Child. Like, this year, I just 40 lashes. Like, that's not what we're doing around here. But it is a beautiful thing when you say, you know what? I'm going out. I was just going to get a few things for me or for my grandkids or whatever. But that's right. What are they doing at the church? They're doing that thing. I can grab, oh, look, those things are on sale. Let me get 2 or 3 bags of that. Hallelujah. I would love for you to be able to share your gifts with a place that is doing something that makes some sense. The government's going to take their portion. I'm going to tell you this right here. And I don't know what they're going to do with it. They might put in a new toilet in the Oval Office, and it's like in your town, and you're going to help pay for it, and ain't nobody going to ask you a dime. You can serve on a committee, and you can talk about what we do at the event and what it looks like. Hallelujah. So, we can serve at a distance. We can serve real close. We can be real close. And whenever Satan tries to push us and make us say, oh, I don't get invited. Oh, they're over there talking about, those other folks. What? You got to remember how close God has made us, that we are a family. All of those good times, all of those special moments, remember all of that. Because I think that's why Peter came back. I wish Judas would have remembered. I wish Judas would have thought about it and said, you know what? We've been like the prodigal son. He says, I remember what Jesus did for all of those other people. I bet you he'd forgive me. I bet you he would. So, yes, ma'am. It seems like from John's there, because it seems like John says it like this. John says there was somebody who knew the high priest, and he went in, and then later on he says, and the one who's writing is I'm that person. But like he said, I like the way he sets it up, because John is real humble, but oftentimes he has to tell you, I'm that person. But he's that person. And it seems like he knows he said somebody who was known to the high priest. John was a little bit more connected, it seemed. But it also didn't tell us that John went around saying, "Hey, I know Jesus. Hey, can I be right there?" I mean, like he also wasn't number 4 right there. He made it to the cross though. I mean, what I think is amazing is that Jesus is able to talk to John and to say, "Behold your mother, and mother behold your son." And so, I mean, there's a closeness still that happens there. And I don't know where Peter is at that moment, but I know Jesus talks to him while Jesus is hanging out for 40 days after the resurrection, before the ascension. And he talks to Peter a few times. And they seem to have a good relationship still. And he sends him out. So now it says, but Peter, after, this classic back and forth going on, but Peter said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." All right, the third time, immediately. I love that word. That's a very Mark word. It's like immediately, instantly, straight away, presently, but it's also soon and on the spot. That's what it says. Right then, that rooster started crowing, and he remembered what the Lord had told him. He put it in his mind quietly. He recalled it. He suggested that memory of being at the table and how he boasted of what he would not do and where he would be and how he could do it in his own strength. And a lot of times that's what it takes for us. I mean, God has that. I know it's a hard thing. I mean, isn't it a hard thing for you to see your kids stumble and fall and go their own way? And sometimes you've told them and you don't want to. It's like, I don't think they're going to listen. I got one just trying to learn to walk. That's a hard thing to watch. He's just like, He's like, you watch it. I mean, it's like it's such a beautiful thing that we can see and have those relationships. And Jesus had those, and then he had this one, and he's looking at him. That's what I think is so hard. It says that Jesus looked at him. The Lord turned and looked at him. It's one he's been watching and he's been seeing and all of these in that moment. And I believe Peter saw him look at him. And it's like you link eyes. Man, I've had to do that with Deacon so many times. That's like one of the things. My daddy had that with me. I mean, that's all it took. Like sometimes, like, please don't say my name. If you say that the name is like you've gone way too far. If you my whole start saying your whole name, that's just way too far. But he said Jesus told him he would deny him, to disown him, to forget, or lose oneself. That's to forget and lose. I keep going back to the prodigal son, and Jesus talks about this, and it's like just to lose oneself and to have all of that fear come in. I mean, it made sense. If they could do this to Jesus, we've seen this man walk on water. If they can do this to him, what will they do to us? And maybe that's and we have to think about that too. He would not affirm having an acquaintance or having a connection. And, I thought it was such an interesting thing. I went on a field trip with Deacon today, and there's a teacher's aide, and Deacon's been talking about the lady we've sent, but the same thing that I've gave many of you. And at Valentine's Day, we gave to his teachers, and she told me, she said, "I saw that you sent," and she told me that, she said, "I'm an ordained minister in the Nazarene church." I said, "Oh," and so me and Miss Sally had a whole different conversation than we've been able to have. But see, it was something that I had to say. I don't know this lady's profession of faith, but I said, if she's serving in the schools and helping my kid, we want to do something nice for her. And I don't think that It's a mean thing to share the gospel. I mean, my atheist friends have to see it, and they say, "Oh, we really like the pictures." That's what they always say. I send it to them. It's very, I mean, it's always very scripture push, but they was like, "We like the pictures." I was like, "Well, good." That's why I put a lot of pictures in it. But like but it's really about talking to you about it. And one year it was like really strong, the day of judgment, right? Like love in the day of judgment. But that's an important word. Because if you really love somebody, you do not want them to go to hell. Like, I think that's a big part of this. That's what Jesus Christ died to keep us from. That's why it's important that we do not deny him. We need a connection with him now and eternally. I believe there is something that's going to happen when he comes back, and he's going to establish a whole new kingdom. And the only people who get to live in peace forever are those who love him. So now this next page tells us that Jesus was mocked and beaten. 63 says the men who were holding Jesus started mocking and beating him. And after blindfolding him, they kept asking, "Prophesy, who hit you?" And they were saying many other blasphemous things against him. Now, a whole lot here. This word mocking, this is literally to play. They start playing with him. They start jeering at him, or I looked up this, deride him, to ridicule him, and to express a contempt or a hatred. It's always been interesting to me how sometimes you can talk to people and the way that they talk about what you believe is just like the most offensive things. You believe? Oh, that's. I was talking to my friend the other day, and I even said, "Yeah, I do believe in a 6-day creation." And he just kind of rolled his eyes, and I was like, "Yeah, but I do. I go back to that, and I can't explain it, but it feels real good to me to believe because I think Jesus looked at the scriptures that way, and he knew about it, and he understood it, and that's something that I've been mocked for believing. People are like, "That's ridiculous that you would even think that." I mean, people like you're pretty smart in most things, but then you got a couple of I can't even believe, and that's what people try to tell you. Oh no. Well, and the greatest things about us not understanding is that there's so many things that we don't understand about our own selves. That the Holy Spirit has given us some insights into, and some of it we still really don't get. And so we don't even have to go to all of the mysteries of the world. Sometimes it's like, why does my foot hurt that way? Like the top of my foot hurts almost every time I get up. And I don't understand what that has to do with anything. And I don't have any idea, like, what is that connect? Is it like the Lord is teaching me something? Like there's nothing in the scriptures that he like says, "This is why the top of your foot hurts." I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get answers when I pray about it either. It's not like this is where it goes. Exactly. I mean, and the thing about it is I talk to my friends, and everybody has some type of pain. It's good for me to understand pain, because everybody has to understand. You can't minister to God's people and not understand pain. But we all want to be able to do it as subject matter experts and not experience it at all. I read a book. I took a 30-minute. One time somebody told me, no, 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 no. Someone told me they didn't need to read the Bible because they had watched Passion of the Christ. Not even like the Ten Commandments or something like that. It's like the Passion of the Christ is like a third of the gospel. Like it's not even half of the Bible. Like I mean, there's so much more into what God's word says, but we think we got it. So I think this is a very big thing for us to understand what we don't understand, and keep going back to the word, but recognize too that just believing in the resurrection is something that's ridiculous to some people. That there was a man who, Easter is a time for us to remember that what we believe in is the supernatural. And it ain't Wiccan, and it ain't I mean, it ain't a whole bunch of wizards and warlocks and stuff like that. We're talking about Jesus Christ. Everything in this now. I mean, kids love dinosaurs and all of these other things, and I think it's perfectly fine. But what the Bible says about the resurrection, that's something I can teach you. Now I can't tell you about if a stegosaurus look. I mean, I'm just tell you this right here, because if a chicken bone is in there, like it throws off everything, and I don't know. I can't tell you, and I like to play it with them, but I don't know. I don't know. I was watching something today, and they said, "Oh well, they really had feathers." I was like, "Oh my! All of the little stuff was supposed to have feathers on it. All of these years, we never knew. I didn't know." But that's not ridiculous. If scientists say that all of the dinosaurs had feathers, we've been wrong. They weren't really reptiles. Like we'd all go along with Pluto's not a planet. All of that because they're so smart. Jesus Christ says truth. That's the Holy Spirit. That's what he says, truth. He said, and I will use the foolish things to confound the wise. And that's what we always got to keep leaning into. Every time we keep getting all these new things that come out. Now, this next word is beating. So they didn't just mock him. Man, that's a hard one. But then they started beating him. Now, this word is scourge, to whip with an instrument. When I was a kid, there were switches. And then sometimes they tell you to go get your own switch. And you come back with a switch, your switch won't big enough. So you better get a switch big enough. Because if you don't want, so I tell you, so that's switches. Sometimes that was belts. Sometimes, that was some stuff other than just switches. But I'm telling you, the instruments that they talk about what Jesus Christ got beat with, some of them talk about a cat of nine tails or something. Like things with basically things as sharp as razor blades on them. And that's where this word to flay, to peel off. The way when you're trying to fillet a fish, right? And it's connected to a corpse or a carcass, right? It's the idea of this thing is not meant to keep living. You get what I'm saying? Like a corpse or a carcass, not a person, right? So when you whip a kid for correction, you don't want to kill them, right? That's how you just want to be a little spanking so they keep on going. This is a real sad story, but I had goats. We had a bunch of goats, and a buddy of mine, my goats kept being naughty. I had a bunch of babies come out, and a buddy of mine, he was like, I got an air pistol. He was like, and every now and then he was like with one, he was like, just get that air pistol. And he was like, give him a little pop, and he was like, and they'll get in line. I don't know what type of ammunition he had with this air pistol because I popped one from a long distance. And the thing started going down and started moving heavy. And I gave him that air pistol back. I said, that thing is too heavy. I said, because what I'm telling you is that no matter what it is, sometimes the instrument is too hard. Sometimes the tongue is that instrument. And sometimes the way that you look at your kid is a little too hard. And you got to come back and say, oh, I'm sorry. I've hurt your feelings. I recognize that was a harsh way that I responded to you. And I did it out of my anger, out of my frustration. But they beat him intentionally. And then they blindfolded him and they kept asking him, prophesy who hit you. They said, speak by divine inspiration. They basically said, you've been talking so much over this last week and you've silenced everyone. Now, what do you have to say? It's the way sometimes unbelievers, when we go through hardships and when we go through trials, when they're looking and it's like, so now, where is your God? Now, how are you going to praise? Now, how are you going to keep talking about those good things? When there's a bunch of people at the workplace who are non-believers and you as a believer, for whatever reason, keeps being singled out to get picked on, and you keep on coming in and you keep on being nice and people keep on being rude to you, how are you going to respond? And so as they kept jeering or kept playing, they kept asking for God to predict or to foretell the future events. Tell us how you're going to get out of this one. You talked about how you were going to come back and how you were going to destroy the temple and how you were going to raise it back up. Teach us, that's this word prophesy, teach us a lesson now. And it says, after they were saying many other blasphemous things against him. This word means to vilify. I don't know, it's like basically to make somebody the villain. You ever talk to anybody and every time they tell a story, it's like, this person did this to me. You know, like you just kind of listen, and it's always like, there's always, oh, I was in line, and this lady, he's like, man, you never can catch a break. Everybody's always, like, I go there, and they're so sweet to me. I don't know who you're dealing with. Like, you know, I go to that same place, and they are very kind. I don't know. Who was working that day? Oh, I don't know. To vilify, to make the villain, but also to defame. The action of damaging a good reputation. So this is what to blaspheme means, and to take something that is good. So you're not blaspheming if it's bad and you call it bad. That's telling the truth. Sometimes the quality is bad, the service is bad. We just gotta say it's bad. You know, you're supposed to tell the truth, but sometimes there's something that's really good, but it's better than us, and we don't like it that it's better than us. We're envious of the way that it is, and we sow a little bit. Oh, the way I had an aunt who is in her spiritual development. There came a time where she would like say what the preacher was saying, like, you know, during church on Sunday, and she was basically always trying to finish the preacher's phrases, and it just really annoyed some people. But I don't know. But you know what I thought? I was like, why does it annoy them so much? It's like that's her. That was her method. Like she was trying to get into the flow of things, but it just bothered them so much. And I saw it. It ended up being this. They were envious. They were like she was trying, and they won't do it because I didn't see these people coming to Bible study. She was trying to go to Bible study, trying to soak it up. They weren't trying to do anything. They just were talking junk about her. That was their exercise. That was all they were doing, talking junk. It's slander, to speak evil or to revile. It is verbal abuse. Verbal abuse. And then we're closing out now. Our last page, Jesus faces the Sanhedrin, 66 to 71. It says, when daylight came, the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the scribes, convened and brought him before their Sanhedrin. They said, if you are the Messiah, tell us. But he said to them, if I do tell you, you will not believe. And if I ask you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God. They all asked, are you then the Son of God? And he said to them, you say that I am. Why do we need any more testimony? They said, since we've heard it ourselves from his mouth. All right. So now daylight came. Now this is interesting. The way that the Jews were looking at days, you really start looking at a day or counting a day from night. So daylight is the beginning of the day for us, but they started already, this is already into the day. The elders of the people, both the chief priests and the scribes, now this word convened, they gathered together, they assembled. It's kind of like the crowd, but now this is about accompanying or joining together. It can be used about entertainment or hospitality, and I think it's an interesting thing of how they made a social event of Jesus is beating, and it was mocking and crucifying. And so during this time, they have similar things, like even the Colosseum, where people fight and they beat one another. And people look at it and they always laugh. But I got a friend and he invites me over, and every time he invites me over to watch like mixed martial arts or boxing, I was like, I just can't watch grown men beat each other up. There was a couple of times when I was in college where somebody was like, "You got my back," and we got in fights, and I didn't like it then. I don't want to pay a whole bunch of money to see two people fight. It's a hard thing, but like these people fought so hard that they killed one another. And that was sport and entertainment in their day. And I'm just telling you, some of the stuff that they make and put on movies is not so different. Some of the games that our kids play, video games, they're not so different. We're always a little concerned about the things that happen in our streets and in our schools, and then it's like those things happen on our screens all the time. Right, exactly right. And so and we're a little concerned about some parts of it, but not concerned about all parts of it. And I just think there's a little bit of it to whereas we're looking at how they convened, how they got together, how they joined, and how they entertained themselves. We got to be careful of the ways that we entertain ourselves and how it's easy to watch when people make fun. I'm telling you, it bothers me now. Some of my favorite shows could make fun of Jesus, and it would bother me, and I would like not like that episode, but I could try, and it's just like it keeps bothering me a little more and more and more of how they can make fun of my Lord, and how that. So, but we all have our things that we can work on, and we have the things that we believe and the things that we don't believe. And so believe is to think something is true. To have confidence, to entrust, or to put faith in. And so Jesus said, listen, I know you're not going to believe if I tell you. And he said, you're not going to put your faith in me. You're not going to trust, because it said it many other times that people, even when they tried to believe, when they wanted to believe, when they even believed, it was the fear of other folks. They were afraid that other folks were not going to accept them in those other communities. And that's what we talk about sometimes at church, of our old friendships. The ways that if we start to be the person at the job who says, hey, I don't like gossip, in a place where we've normally been gossiping, will we have anybody who wants to sit with us at lunch? It's one of those, like, dude, I've had conversations with people every morning where they complained and I agreed and affirmed their complaining, and then I waited till my turn and then I did it. And then one day it was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And the person was mad at me because I didn't want to complain anymore. I just feel like we should do something. I just feel like this is not working. And it's like, well, and we never talked again. And it's like, well, I thought I'd find somebody else. They didn't want to change that conversation. In this, it says that Jesus Christ was the one who was the Son of Man who would be seated at the right hand of the power of God. Now, it's like that, the fact that this one stressed the power of God, the strength, the ability, the mighty works, or the miracles, the virtue, and the excellence of soul that God has. And that's where Jesus Christ is, with all authority. And so it's this play on here is like these people are using their jurisdiction, their power, their authority, their systems. And if we trust in our power, our systems, we'll end up in a similar situation. That's why I think he's always challenging us. I love to hear how so many people have come to saving faith of Jesus Christ, and in their journey, They've had different denominations. They've had different churches. They've had different experiences that God has used to teach them and bring them where they are. They say, "Oh, I was at this one church and this one lady, or we were at this one Bible study, and as we grow and we fellowship with one another, we can learn a whole lot." And the power of Jesus Christ oftentimes come just in our fellowship with one another. He works whenever two or three of us are gathered together. He's there with us, and that's the power of God. And we can actually, he said we would do greater works than he's done. I still think that's a big one. And I like to think of those greater works, and many times looking like simple things like love and forgiveness. Man, forgiving enemies, forgiving debts. Some of it is like when you have a person who has mistreated you, who's called you a name, who said something about you and it got back to you, and they keep smiling in your face and they still go to church here, and you see them every Sunday and you want to say something, you never said anything, but you want to say something. And you let it go. And you forgive and you start being nice and you help their grandkid or whatever. That's power. I think that's a supernatural power. Most people don't even want that type of power. They don't want to do anything. They want to hold the grudge. They want to talk about it. They want to say 60 years later, let me tell you what she said and why I'm still angry about it, and I'll never forgive her. That's so forgiveness. That's a big superpower. Loving it, that's a big superpower. That's what Jesus Christ did. That's what he did on the cross. Every one of the sins. He forgave them. Put them in a sea of forgetfulness as far as the east is from the west. That's what, so we look at where the power is, like speaking in tongues, all of that's real, like forgiveness is where I was like, not whole, like self-control. That's, whew. As you talk about a power, a fruit of the spirit, that's a big one. I talk about it as a man, that's why I cry. That's why I cry. Crying for me is the most cathartic. It's the purging of emotions. I cry because many times I want to fight. And I can't fight. It is never appropriate for me to fight when I'm angry. Like, that's not, you just can't do that as an adult man when you get upset. Like, come here, waiter, and you did this wrong. Like, let me. You can't do that. Like the man told you it was going to be one cost and then there's another cost. You can't just have a fisticuff every time you want. But there is something that happens in worship. And when I'm thinking about the goodness of the Lord and all he's done for me, and when tears come and all of everything can be wiped away, and I can start afresh, and I can go and be offended 6 more times. Like, I'm ready. But I need that purging of emotion. I was telling Dewey that. I said, man, I love to see a man. I love to see a grown man cry. It helps me know that I might not get hit by him anytime soon. I said, 'cause, I know he's going through good things, good ways of help. But that's an important thing. I think that purging of emotions in Jesus Christ, because this is what Jesus Christ wept about Lazarus before he rose him. So, I mean, I always think about that. Like, he cried because he's with the people, and it's not just about unbelief. I think he genuinely could go through emotions, too. But, man, it's so beautiful when we are just filled with joy, and we just can't help. And I know this was a hard time, but some of this, too, is like, but now think about where Jesus is and that joy that he has. And when he intercedes for us, all of that is gone. And this was momentary. For the God who lives forever, this was momentary, but he was reunited. And that power that he has now is to come to us through his spirit at any point in time, because he's the Son of God. The immediate, even if, that's what I thought about this, it was in there, even if remote. So it's the closeness doesn't have anything to do with proximity. Sometimes we think that, we got to be close to our kids to be, they got to live a mile away. And sometimes that's when they're the furthest away, when they live in the house with us. Sometimes they go and they move off and they get kids and then they start calling us more. And we have a very different relationship with our adult children who can talk about the same types of things. Like, yeah, now you get it. Uh-huh. Yeah, your kids don't listen either. Yeah, see how it feels. And it helps. It really does help. But this son being, even if remote, is this kinship. It's a pupil and a descendant, but it's also, I really like this, it's posterity, which means it's provision for all future generations. This is why the concept of sacrifice in the Old Testament is such a big deal. Because as a farmer just for a little while, and somebody with goats and things like that, just telling you, and even I was watching this documentary about the Alaskans, and it's just, when you look at where generations come from, and when you give away to God the firstborn, that is the sign of hope. There is no assurity that there is a second that's coming. That could be all, and now the entire bloodline is done, and you killed it. That one animal could have lived and could have given birth and on and on and so. But when you kill it, and especially when you look at the male that was required many other times. See, you keep that one male and you keep on selling that one male and he keeps on going. But then you give it to God. And the hope and the faith that you have to have that he'll provide a year from now. Because this one was just born. And it ain't like you can just ask for another one to be born next week. You got to wait. And hope that something happened in the spring. Because if it didn't and it don't happen in the fall, it might be 2 years. And what if it's twins and it's too big and both of them die? Now how many years? That's the concept that we're. And so when God gave his one and only, that's his very best, all that he had. There wasn't any more after that. But it's, thank God, that's all we needed. And all future generations come from his one sacrifice. All of us can be washed and clean. And now, oh, we went over. And nobody told me. Why do we need any more testimony? This last one. Witness, a record, a report, or evidence. Our testimony is what we want to give as a case before our judge. That's our testimony. What has he done for us? What has the Lord done for us? Each of us has a testimony. We have something that God has done for us. And each of us has a responsibility to share that testimony. We can be like Peter was. We can follow from a distance, from afar off. But we are the children of God, whether remote. If we are remote, if we feel like he's afar off, if we feel like there's something that has pushed us far away, Jesus Christ says that we are very, very close to him because his Holy Spirit lives in us. He will never leave us nor forsake us. And forgiveness. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. That's right. That's right. Jesus was either on the mountain or in the boat, and the Holy Spirit is everywhere all the time. Hallelujah. Amen. Let us pray. God, we thank you that you went from the temple to the tomb and then you rose again with all power. God, that you are at the right hand of your Father, that you will return. We thank you that you have made provision for all of us. And God, that you are going to work in us and your future generations to be a good witness. God, help us share our testimony. Give us more love. Help us to forgive. Let your will be done. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.